Welcome to SandDunes by Entrepreneur Middle East. And today it's my honor to welcome with us Mr. Wai Lum Kwok, Senior Executive Director at ADGM. Welcome to SandDunes by Entrepreneur Middle East.
Thanks for having me, Tamara.
Thank you for your time. So before we dive into the industry, I know that Abu Dhabi has been, and ADGM has been very active and some impressive track record till now. Tell us more a bit about your own personal journey. How did you find your way into this digital asset space? What was your aha moment with it?
My journey as a financial services regulator started more than 20 years ago with the Monetary Authority of Singapore. Now, there wasn't really an aha moment when it comes to virtual assets, but I think the big, real aha moment for me was to be able to come here to ADGM and start up a regulator from scratch. And the ability to reimagine how we want to interact with the financial services sector, the ability to rethink how we want to build our financial center, our rules and regulations. Now that to me gives me an opportunity for a clean slate to imagine how I want to support the development of the financial services sector in this region. And really, very early on from day one, we recognized that the future of financial services will be technology-driven. It will be innovation-led. So we put ourselves this mission to put in place progressive regulations to support the responsible adoption of innovation. And virtual asset just happens to be one of those transformative developments in the last decade, just like any fintech developments we've seen. And these aha moments for me really is the ability to develop progressive regulations to support what we can do in the development of the crypto economy.
ADGM has been one of the first jurisdictions to start regulating this sector, start embracing it, creating a safe and regulated environment for all participants, way back to 2018, if I'm not mistaken. So if we could briefly summarize the evolution and the place it now has within the world map of all the crypto hubs around the world.
Yes, so back in 2018, when we first broached the topic of regulating this space, we took the deliberate position that cryptos are here to stay. You might wish it away, but we recognize that it is here to stay given the kind of transformation capabilities that it has. And back then, the global conversations among regulators has been the focus around regulating cryptos for their money laundering and terrorist financing risk. But we felt that we need to go beyond that ML and FT risks. We need to regulate things like investor protection, investor disclosures, safe custody of client assets, technology governance, countering of market manipulation, abuse, and so on and so forth. And that's through our conversations with the various institutional players that we interacted with. So what happened in the end was we essentially just extended our regulations in the traditional financial space to carve virtual asset as just another asset class into our regulations. So whether you are an exchange, a broker-dealer, an asset manager, a custodian, or payments provider in the virtual asset space, we regulate you just like a traditional financial sector player. Right? So that was the approach I've taken. Not many, in fact, I don't think back then when we were doing our peer comparison, we really haven't come across such a model, but we decided that that would be the right way to go because we ultimately see the convergence of crypto, NewFi with TradFi.
And when you compare today, there are a couple of hubs that are focused on digital assets, virtual assets around the world. Singapore, Hong Kong, Switzerland, then we have regulations in the US, in the EU, and Dubai. Actually, UAE has been quite active. How would you place ADGM within that system? What are the differences, what are the similarities, and I'm more interested in the philosophy. Some of the regulators have taken an approach of product-based regulation, some have taken the approach of activity-based regulation. Give us more insights into how ADGM is working in that regard.
We do adopt activity-based approach, and that's basically the way we approach the regulation of the financial services sector. So I mentioned earlier that we basically extended our approach to traditional finance to crypto. Now I'm probably not an expert to say that I know enough what the other jurisdictions are doing, but the reality is different jurisdictions have different starting points, and their priorities and circumstances are different. So how they evolve their regulatory framework, I think, has been a function of their starting point to begin with. Right? Some adopt a wait-and-see approach, thinking that the innovation should be allowed to evolve and develop before thinking how best to regulate it. I mentioned that some started off with looking at focusing on AML/CFT. ADGM took a more comprehensive approach in addressing the various aspects of the risk that we see. And some, like you said, some jurisdictions actually think of crypto as a payments token and regulating as such, and this is the example in Singapore. Some took it as a form of digital commodity, and of course when they exhibit the characteristics of a securities, they will be regulated like any securities products. So I think suffice to say, each of the regulators started off at different points depending on their circumstances, but gradually it is converging and it's harmonizing, because as issues around FTX unfold, the regulators realize that there's a common thread, and that's where the conversation starts to be a bit more active, and indeed you see that the rules and regulations starts to become more enshrined.
And one of our goals is to basically present what the UAE is doing in this space to all the entrepreneurs and investors around the world. And as you know, it has been a preferred hub for new entrepreneurs as well as investors in this space. So for anybody looking at this video from all around the world and maybe deciding whether to set up at ADGM, tell us more about who are the types of businesses, entrepreneurs, investors that choose to set up at ADGM, and tell us more about the process.
I believe the various businesses that chose ADGM or the other centers have their certain objectives that they want to achieve, right? And UAE is in a very unique position where the different centers actually offer different value proposition for different businesses. I think in ADGM and as well as the other financial free zones such as DIFC, I do see us being an English common law jurisdiction tend to attract attention from the international players, because that's what international investors and players are comfortable with, right? Especially those that have been operating in other common law jurisdictions like Hong Kong, Singapore, UK, US. So I think that tends to be one major reason as to why they choose ADGM. For firms coming to use us as a gateway that they are familiar with to serve the region and UAE. At the same time, local champions here seeking to expand overseas, especially to other English common law jurisdictions, they find that ADGM is actually a good platform for them to scale because of the legal construct, right? So I mean, I can think of the common law jurisdiction as one of the plus points. And me being been with ADGM from day one, I do think that we, and I mentioned earlier about our vision and mission to want to support responsible adoption of innovation, and I think that's one of our credo, and we continuously institutionalize that culture, that approach to regulating this space, and I hope that paradigm would impress upon the industry in how we engage with them.
If you could tell us approximately how many licenses you have under ADGM already, and what types predominantly of technologies, businesses are those?
Today, we have about over 20 in our budding ecosystem. About 16 have been probably active, 6 are in the pipeline. Right? The budding ecosystem, it's pretty small, but at the same time starting to diversify. We do have exchanges, we do have broker-dealers, we have asset managers, we have standalone custodians, we even have a stablecoin issuance recently. So I think the core players in the ecosystem are shaping up nicely, and we're very encouraged by that.
And what trends do you see among applicants? Who is being more and more attracted to the UAE and ADGM in particular?
Interestingly, back in 2018, we find that most of the interests are coming from players that are serving an objective to allow for price discovery. And this would be the exchanges and the broker-dealers. And that's because the early adopters of crypto tends to be individuals. And they need a place to buy, sell cryptos. Right? So the exchanges and the broker-dealers are sort of the first wave of players that have come in. The next wave, I think, is very much defined in the aftermath of the FTX event and the winter crypto, the crypto winter that happens after that. And that is when you see the interest in the institutional players start to ramp up. They see this as almost like a 2003 internet moment, right? Where the industry is consolidating, the excesses are sort of being driven away, that separates the good and the bad. And then it actually presents a golden opportunity for institutional players to now invest in. Right? So you start to see crypto firms that are offering institutional grade solutions, bank-backed broker-dealers, institutional crypto market makers, asset managers, institutional asset managers that invest into this sector, give rise to liquidity, and that in turn attract other players to come in. Right? But at the same time, a very interesting development is happening that's game-changing within Abu Dhabi and the UAE, and that is the sovereign wealth funds and the state actors are starting to actually invest into this sector. And you find them investing into the core ecosystem players. They provide the core risk capital to attract the international players. Right? So that was a huge, I think, game-changing moment for the UAE as well. And then there's the third phase, which is now that you have price discovery, now that you have safe custody and institutional grade solutions, the customers and investors are looking to seek extra yield from the assets. So you hear things like custodian staking, yield farming, liquid staking, crypto borrowing and lending. Right? So that sort of is following the trend of what we've seen in the past capital markets development. Right? You see the liquidity in the space deepening and widening. That is, to me, a very, very exciting development because you actually, in fact, recently we just granted in principle approval to institutional specialist prime broker that deals in virtual asset borrowing and lending. So you see, indeed, the institutions doubling down in this space. And for us, our value proposition has always been quite institutional focused. So I think we're very, very upbeat and positive in the development.
Interesting. Let's go through ADGM's position on acceptance of risk, enforcement. How do you see that evolving probably together with the market?
I mentioned earlier that our end state is that we see a convergence between cryptos and traditional finance. And being a first mover has its challenges, because if you look left and look right, you don't really have peers that you have reference points. Right? So a lot of it has to do with what can we dig deep to rely on, and given our vision that cryptos and traditional finance will eventually converge, you see that in our regulatory framework, and reflects in our regulatory framework and regulatory approach in terms of carving crypto as just another asset class within our approach. We recognize that at the end of the day, digitalization and tokenization in virtual assets is just another form of technology. Right? If you peel off the layer, the risks between TradFi and crypto is largely the same. You've got financial crime risk, you've got settlement risk, you've got liquidity risk, you've got market manipulation risk, and so forth. So that sort of helps us, a starting point for us to know how to regulate this space. Right? Looking at the risk that we are so used to in the TradFi space, and then learning, adapting our framework and approach to NewFi and crypto. So that said, while we would like to align our approach and regulations with the TradFi space, the practical implementation of regulating the crypto space would have to be a lot more practical in nature, right? Because for a technology firm to make the transition into a financial services firm, that journey doesn't happen overnight. You almost have to get them to understand what is the rule about, why are we regulating you, and so forth. So I would say yes, the risk, while we look at crypto as no different from traditional finance, the way we regulate, you will find that there are subtle differences at the start, simply because the crypto space ecosystem is not as developed and mature as the TradFi space.
What would be your overview analysis of the sector globally at the moment, and what would be your predictions for the future? What would you wish, in which way to go? How do you see it developing from now? Not only in Abu Dhabi, but in general for all our listeners and viewers from around the world. Where do you see the sector going now? It's getting better and better.
Yeah. I think it reinforces the point that it is here to stay. That's one, right? The fact that the institutional players are coming in, that sort of bridges the convergence between TradFi and NewFi. I am particularly very excited about the real-world asset tokenization, which essentially, if you think about it, it is just a representation of ownership in a digital token, and it is a very powerful idea because some say that it's even more powerful than securitization, because you are now able to monetize and exchange that token and value in ways that you can never be possible before, right? For me, of all the real asset tokens, stablecoins and fiat reference tokens offers the greatest use case from what I've seen. Personally very excited about that, because that token, because of its effective store of value and stable value, essentially is a very real and viable alternative form of payments. You can now transfer a token from one place to another place, one person to another person, 24/7 real time, without the need for intermediary at a much lower cost, right? And it doesn't stop there. Only last year, September, the stablecoin that was issued in ADGM has a yield-bearing component, which means it's not only just used as a form of payments. The holder actually collects yield on a daily basis. It's almost like a passing on of interest savings to the holder, right? And you can imagine in places where you are financially underserved in terms of a bank account or investment account, what are the possibilities? So that's really exciting for me.
And for retail investors, one of the missions with SandDunes by Entrepreneur Middle East for me is to demystify this sector. What I've noticed when we all do the interviews or we listen to podcasts, there's a lot of vocabulary, terminology, and people still don't connect to it, still don't understand. And even in some of the biggest crypto events recently, all the main speakers were saying we don't still have real life applications enough for the broad public to accept it, to understand it. So what would be your main pieces of advice for general audience? How can we demystify this sector and help them understand it better, help them understand what is coming, what will this innovation do for them, and that it's not something scary as it's usually in media?
Truth be told, it is a very daunting task for a layman to try to understand it. And I mean, in the past, I've tried to sort of explain in layman terms as much as possible. But I think there's the technology component you need to explain, there's the use case that you need to explain, so on and so forth. Right? Now, I think the greatest revolution around digital assets I mentioned earlier is that you are able to represent ownership on a token. And if you think about the world now in terms of Web 2 world, we are moving towards a world where everything is digital. Right? What is that form of currency? Right? You will find that the bank accounts, the balance that we have in our banks, today they are not interoperable with the digital world and in the crypto world. Right? And it's limited to only all those who have access to bank accounts. So it's in a way a centralized platform where access is controlled by centralized intermediaries. Now, for the retail investors looking at investing into this space, think of that token as something which is interoperable with anything else in the world with no one controlling it, right? And I think one example could be today when you go onto Facebook or you go onto Google or you go to Amazon, right? You actually have to log in, you create contents in there, they have every right to kick you out once you breach any of their conditions, right? But with that cryptocurrency, the token, you can design an economy where that contents that you built, just like in the Web3, in the internet world, is yours and no one can take it away from you because that ownership is represented through that token, right? So that token is out there in the world and there's no one that's able to control and take it away from you. So I think that's the transformative part, but we are not there yet in terms of the digital economy. But that is the future that holds to a lot of people who today are denied access to some of these centralized platforms like the Facebook and the Googles and the Apples of the world.
So basically it will cancel the cancel culture.
Yeah.
To a certain extent, right?
Yeah, I mean, today Go, if you want to use Go as a form of currency, you can possibly barter trade, right? Without going through the banking system, right? But even then, that is a physical token, right?
Absolutely.
So think about it as now a virtual token. I can just pass this to you from one end of the world to another world, and no one is able to control that.
Last two questions. First, your advice for entrepreneurs, investors, everyone around the world who is working in this space. What would you like them to focus on more, to develop more, maybe certain technologies or trends that you think are good and that will support the overall ecosystem? Actually, not ecosystem, like the sector globally. And then why they should keep an eye on Abu Dhabi. Yeah.
Okay. I think I mentioned about the real asset being an exciting area for me. So for investors into this space, I think there are a lot more use cases that have not been tapped yet. I would I think being in this revolution, right, where you are sort of caught right in the center of, it's almost like one of those aha moment, right, for the investors, right? Just like AI, just like blockchain technology, I think that is at the point, at the crossroads where this technology can discover a new paradigm that you probably cannot imagine before. Right? I really love the use cases of that shared reference tokens that can be used for payments and can be used as a form of savings. Right? I think anything at this point other than when the cryptocurrencies first burst into the scene, people thought that it is going to be a good way of allowing peer-to-peer transfers of money. But the reality is that it has not really taken off because of the volatile nature. So that, to me, will continue to grow, just like market and demand forces determine how gold, the value of gold is. So that will happen for crypto assets, for Bitcoin and Ether. While that is developing, I think we do need to be able to get people to understand and realize what is probably going to be most practical in the near term, and for institutional players to feel safe playing the playground. And that, to me, is indeed the real asset tokens. So I don't have a crystal ball to gauge what's going to be the future like, but based on my limited can today as a regulator and based on my interaction with the industries, that area has been the focus of investors, institutions, and I think as a consumer that are not currently fully served in the financial sector, it is an effective means of bank account as well as investment account.
Thank you. And why should the world look at the UAE, including of course Abu Dhabi, in this space? What do you think are strengths where we can develop more? What are the areas on which we should focus more, and what areas are extremely beneficial for people working in this sector? Just if we can maybe end with a special note for them.
Right. I think in the UAE we are in a unique position where we are so open and cosmopolitan. We are so embracing of talent, where people come over here with a vision to build things bottom up. But at the same time, we have to support a top-down vision in terms of pushing innovation, experimenting, having wow ideas to create new frontiers. Right? So I think this combination of being open to attract talent in a bottom-up approach, but at the same time a top-driven vision of where we want to shape how we want to shape the economy, puts us in good state. Right? Abu Dhabi remains and always been labeled as the capital of capital. Definitely where there is money to be invested in new initiatives and ventures, I think that is one strong drawing point for a lot of entrepreneurs and firms coming to the sector, coming into this region. So people, government, progressive regulations and systems. I think those constituents are very much what ADGM has been building in the last 10 years, and good to see that we are now bearing some of those fruits.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you to all of you who listened. This was SandDunes by Entrepreneur Middle East.